All right, Wes, coming into camp, we thought you were a little bit narrow. You obviously need your feet up under you in the game of football for balance, mobility, leverage, and power. That's what football is all about. But your average stance is going to be slightly wider than the shoulders in the game of football. And your average snapping stance may be 4 or 6 or sometimes 8 inches wider than that. Simply because we need more clearance between the legs, need the knees out of the way so we can make an unrestricted, uninhibited throw down and towards our target, down through the legs and towards our target. Does that make sense? Okay, so we're trying to widen you out just a touch. Maybe try the toes outward slightly. And when you sit down into the stance, just push your knees out over the toes. That'll maximize your operating room between the legs without getting your feet out too wide. Go ahead and sit up facing the camera. Let's see what your stance width looks like right now. Is that comfortable? Yeah. The important thing is to see that the knees are slightly wider than the shoulders. That's kind of the measure we use. But be very sure your weight bearing of the body's on the quads. If you ever get tension in the hip flexors, number one, that means you're too wide. It's going to tighten you up, tense you up, and slow you down because you're going to have to fight through the tension on the way to accelerating the football. Make sense? Yep. Okay, so use that as your guide. Go ahead and step back over here real quickly. The other things that we had coming in, slightly overextended downfield. You had the ball a little too far out in front of you, okay? That's going to tend to pull a little bit too much weight forward in the stance. I thought that your knees were a little bit ahead of your toes, but on film it was hard to tell, okay? But because of that weight forward bias, what you were tending to do was shift your weight back into the hips a little too much to the point where you're basically sitting kind of flat-footed. And the thing that makes it hard to tell is it looks like you're both flat-footed and the knees are out ahead of the toes. And normally if knees are ahead of the toes, that's telling us you got too much weight forward. You're sitting flat-footed. So, it could just be the way you're built, or it could just be, something kind of unique. What I think we really need to do is essentially take your whole head to tail platform, okay, spine from the tip of your cranium to the bottom of your coccyx, okay, and we want to lower that down just a little bit by sitting a little deeper in the stance. Let's just settle you down an inch or so closer to the ground. You see what I did there? Okay, that's going to help us get your knees right over the toes, but also get you more balanced neutral, which means weight on the balls of the feet, okay? On top of that, we thought you might be jabbing at the follow-through a little bit. I think we saw the hands getting through the legs not bad on film, so I'm not going to harp on that too much. But let's go ahead and set you up and see what we can do. First thing we're going to do is 3-step you. You ready? Yep. Okay, I'm going to pull you forward. That gets knee bend to 90 degrees or less, straightens the back, fully extends the arms. Then I'm going to raise you up, maximizing operating room under your torso. Last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to push you back into the hips, to the heels touch the ground, knees are over the toes, and you're solid on your feet. Now, does that feel comfortable? Yeah. Give it a good, hard, aggressive throw from right there. Let's see what happens. Excellent. Feel good? Yeah. Now, one thing we did talk about is you do tend to drag the ball on the ground. Mm-hmm. It creates friction, so it slows down the acceleration. Some people think it gives them more control, but keep in mind on different playing surfaces, that'll give you different results. An old school type turf field, it could stick too much and you can end up bouncing the ball 3 stories high or something like that. You might be better if you can figure out how to not drag it. This morning we talked about a couple ideas: cocking the wrist, tilting the ball, maybe raising your front end a little higher off the ground if we have to. It's going to be up to you. I don't think we can. It could be. I don't think we can perfect it in 2 days necessarily, but we're going to work on it. By tomorrow it should look pretty good. Go ahead and set up again. Okay, so coming in, you were a little tall on the back end, a little overextended downfield, and a little bit flat-footed. Kind of funky, huh? A little overstretched. So we basically pushed you down a little closer to the ball, shifted the weight to get you balanced, okay? Back and forth till we find the knees over the toes. Lift that ball up, set it down, and it's okay to bring it out a little as long as it doesn't lead to a shifting of weight. Yeah. Okay? Give it a good hard throw. Let's see what happens. Excellent. Great velocity. You're coming through. You're not getting a perfect spiral. Part of it is because you're dragging it on the ground so much. Yeah. Now, I've got a couple ideas there. Let's do a couple more balls. Toss those back, Ian, if you don't mind. Go ahead and set up. You're not pushing down on the ball with your left hand, are you? No. I want you to get a positive fingertip grip with this hand so you can pull and throw with both hands, first of all. Okay. Next thing I want you to do, I want you to try tilting the ball slightly. Let's see what happens. Not good, huh? You're just not used to it. Let's try and do the polar opposite then. Let's see what happens here. Okay? Let's try flattening the ball even more. Okay? That's going to increase arm extension, so be aware. Not good either, right? Okay, let's get those balls back. And again, like I said, this is not the most important thing in the world, but I think you could throw a ball harder with a better spiral if you could get to where you're dragging the football less. Let's try one other tactic. Have you ever tried cocking the wrist slightly by getting the strings just kind of right underneath the ball? Try that and see what happens. Greater spiral, huh? Yeah. I think we need to cock the wrist slightly, which the way to do that, let's get the string straight down at the ground, okay? Let's do that, and then we're going to do one other thing and see if those two in combination can get rid of you dragging the ball. I want you to take your front end, your head and shoulders, raise them off the ground a little bit more. Let's see what happens. The blind snapper wants to be pretty horizontal, shoulders to hips anyway. Lesser, huh? Maybe not as good, but I think cocking the wrist a little is going to be a good thing. So why don't we work with that throughout camp the next day and a half? Okay. And let's see where we are tomorrow, okay? Do you have any questions? Nope. Comfortable with all of that? Yep. Be very disciplined in these snaps. Always when you're just practicing snapping, get those hands through the legs, hold them there. Really practice thumbs to the sky. Train for muscle memory so those things become automatic, okay? Not get a weight forward bias. Okay, let's make sure knees over toes for optimal balance. You're looking pretty solid. Give me a good hard two-handed throw, quick and smooth. Keep it rolling. I think I just figured out why you drag the ball. You've really got the hand underneath and you're kind of twisted up with the shoulder. Let's see if we can uncock it a little bit and kind of level out your shoulders. Just real quickly, okay? You see how he's kind of cradling the ball? Uncock it just a bit and get you balanced. Let's try that right there. I don't know, you may hate it, but it's something to play with in the next 3 weeks between now and camp, okay? All right, Wes. Yeah, because I just noticed you're kind of twisted up like that. Maybe just relax. It doesn't have to unwind too much, but just a little bit could make a huge difference, okay? That's pretty good.